for this time that we can be together. And be with you. I pray that our hearts and minds will be here and not distracted on other things. I thank you that we have the opportunity to be together. I pray that we wouldn't take advantage of that. I pray that you would be here with us in this time and be with the moons as they're with family. I thank you for your life and your love that you are teaching us. And I pray this in your name. Amen.
All right, let's continue in book 15 together. See if we can do a couple, because I think the first one we'll look at is a little shorter. Isaac, do you want to read the first one in its entirety, so the Analects and the commentary?
Is that 15:4?
Yeah, 15:4. Yeah.
The master said, "Lu, where are those able to understand virtue?" One line of interpretation follows Huang Can is seeing this as a general statement about the moral quality of Confucius' contemporaries, similar in both syntax and theme to 6.29. Alternately, some follow Wang Tzu in seeing this as a continuation of 15.2, is thus more specifically inspired by Zulu's complaint during the troubles in Qin.
I'm going to read 6:29 as well. The master said, acquiring virtue by applying the mean, is this not best? And yet among the common people, few are able to practice this virtue for long. An alternate reading of the final line is, for some time now, such virtue has been quite hard to find among the people. This is how Hulian and Zhuxi take it. But alternate versions of the passage and other early texts support the reading adopted in the translation. Zhōng might also be read as constant rather than application, in which case the first line would read, acquiring virtue through constantly holding to the mean. Although the record of ritual supports the first reading when it praises the sage King Shun. He grasped both extremes and applied the mean between them when dealing with the common people. So we have this term, the mean, brought up again. It's been a little while since we have looked at it. I know we've even a few times directly asked ourselves how would we explain or describe that? I think what we tend to think of is like we tend to think of it in the context of a compromise, so finding some middle ground, almost as it was put exactly in the commentary we just read, grasping both extremes and applying the mean between them. But to look at it as just a compromise, I think, falls very short of what the mean actually is. So let's explore that a little bit together. What exactly is the mean? Spoken of as something to be applied, so that's important to notice. Something to be kept to, so to remain in as well.
Is it like a standard?
That's a really good way to approach it for sure. it's an interesting word in the English language to use to translate this original Chinese term, because how do we often use the word mean? It's just to refer to someone who's being rude, right? But it's, when we see it in other cases in English, and Jaden might be able to explain this better, but it's actually kind of a mathematical term. And so how would you describe that, Jaden?
Taking the average.
Yeah, so it's I don't know how many connections we want to stretch this to, but yeah, and in math it is finding the average in a set of values.
Which is a midpoint.
Yeah, again, it's kind of finding a middle ground.
1116 is what we looked at for originally, like overshooting or undershooting the mark.
That's what I was thinking of initially. When you think of something that's in the middle ground, but not a compromise, you think of, at least I do, archery.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you wouldn't say hitting the bullseye is a compromise between hitting over here and the target and hitting over here. That's the midpoint because it's what you're aiming for, but it is not a compromise necessarily between two extremes.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the mean functions similarly. It is the bullseye target.
Yeah. And they use a term like the mean because extremes and deficiencies exist. Does that make sense? So, in order for it to be possible to hit the bullseye, it also has to be acknowledged as possible to fall short of it or to overshoot it. And so, recognizing that and just being able to discern that, especially when observing one's own behavior, not to speak of other people's behavior, requires a description of this being able to hit the bullseye as the mean or the middle way, even though that phrase is not used as much. Because again, it is recognized as possible to overdo something or to fall short in it. So, how does this enhance a little bit our understanding of the mean, and why is it described as the mean? What is first being taken into account when trying to understand or find the right way to do something? It's really,
Either overdo it or underdo it.
yeah, recognizing that it's possible to underdo or to overdo something. That's kind of that first very basic recognition that you have. And so then, as Naomi said, it becomes a standard, a measure of behavior going forward, is being able to discern what is overshooting or what is undershooting. And so instead of continuing to use kind of this really abstract language, how would we be able to observe this in a practical example? Like I want y'all start being able to give this some life and some imagery.
I don't know the practical, but my understanding of is he's basically saying everything you do in life, you're either it's going to land somewhere between complete failure and absolute success. But the method is, as long as at the end of the day you try, you're going to hopefully at least end up somewhere in the middle between those. Mm-hmm. But that trying is the method, what matters in the first place. Mm-hmm. As long as you're trying and at least making the mean, that is the best way to live life. Mm-hmm. As long as you are attempting it for whether success or failure, you're going to be making progress, and that is the best way to go about it for virtue's sake.
That's interesting. That's a different interpretation than how I was taking it, but I'm not considering that too.
What do you got?
Well, I think of it less of like the overshooting it is like less of like complete and utter success and more of literally overdoing it. I think of raising a child, for instance. The way you discipline a child, it can be either completely lax, right? They grow up entirely unrestrained and whatnot, which obviously isn't ideal. But simultaneously, you can be overly strict and completely stunt that child's growth because you control and limit every single thing they do. And I think neither of those are ideal. One is an over extreme, one is an under extreme. There is a mean there that is the ideal. You get what I mean?
Yeah, the rational thing is the middle ground.
Yeah.
Would you
and
say
it's-
the mean is like a balance of life?
A balance is a pretty good word to use, yeah.
I'd say. Because a balance does not necessarily suggest that you're compromising either way. Because really,
So there's a balance of,
Yeah, but you are recognizing both sides, and that is what's important. That is how you are finding the mean. Because you have to know how far you can push it versus how much you can't.
I do like your interpretation, though.
I think we can also look at it in like stereotypes, even in the way that the Analects will demonstrate some of these things and actually using certain disciples as specific examples of one or the other, where maybe we can observe a tendency to overshoot or undershoot or underperform in ourselves. So maybe we see ourselves as applying to one versus the other. But I would say it kind of depends on what we're talking about, because it's more likely that we struggle with both and varying things. So what this, as so many other principles and ideas presented in the Analects, does for us is it once again is allowing us to observe not just what we're doing, but how we go about what we do. So it doesn't really as much matter the activity, but it is again focusing on the attitude and the motivation and the manner in which we do what we do. And so in this case, it is first establishing the fact that there is a middle way, or what is probably better said is a right way to do everything. There is a target in all that you do. But what I am suggesting we shift our focus in here is not just seeing it from the point of view as successfully performing an activity from an objective point of view. So you get the desired result. So say in the case of cooking a meal, you make everything in a timely way and in a not wasteful way, and in such a way that everybody ends up enjoying the meal a lot. That's kind of the more objective understanding of successfully completing that goal, which is cooking a meal. But what I'm saying we shift our focus to, as far as we see the success in doing something, the bullseye in something, is the shifting it to the manner, the attitude in which we do that thing. Because what that affects is not only how well we're able to perform that activity and how successful the outcome of it is, but it changes something about us as the performer of that activity, as, say, the cook. Or basically what I'm saying is it is a moral inner examination of ourselves in all that we do. That's the real goal, the real target that we're looking for. And so that's also the mind to have when approaching the mean, is we're not just looking at the balanced way to approach cooking as a skill set, we're looking at the balanced way to approach anything as a person, as a being. So that's how universal the application of this principle is. It's always tied to a person's way of life. And the best word that English scholars of ancient Chinese literature have been able to use to describe this more inner-oriented perspective of Confucian principles is morality, having to do with what's right and wrong. And that certainly applies, but I think it goes even a little deeper than that. Is what I'm saying so far making at least some sense as to like, how to properly interpret the meaning and what we're actually looking for when, again, the word Naomi used is seeing this as applying a standard in life.
Yeah, I think this works just because you can take it as literally or as spiritually as possible, where you can take the most mundane example and say, yeah, you can find the average. But then you can just keep going down past the meat and into the sort of like, what is the average I'm striving for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is it just? And what is the method to continue that?
Mm-hmm. And so kind of tying back into the Analect we actually started with, which seems slightly unrelated to discussion on the meaning. When Confucius says that rare are those able to understand virtue. I think there's a lot you could unpack from that, but I think we could all agree that he's not just talking about the ability to describe virtue as if it were a mere subject matter of theory. He's talking about seeing it demonstrated in a person's life. And that ties into a multitude of analects, but he will often kind of throw his hands up in disappointment in reviewing the age he lived in and seeing just how few there were. But what does that further tell us about the nature of, like just looking at it in our own discussion of it ourselves so far, an experience of seeing it played out in our own lives. Like how much of it have you even seen in yourself? How much of it have you even seen in others? And are you even able to see? Do you even have the capacity to see it in yourself and others? Because in order to do so, you have to understand what it is someone. And Confucius is saying that's a very, very rare thing.
Sometimes recently I've been doing especially in a relationship, when it comes to interacting with people and how you want to I guess apply that standard. I've noticed myself kind of able to think about the outcome of my response or how I am interacting with people, and I can I guess use volleyball as an example, but doing stuff like that and how you are playing with others or how you're interacting with others, no matter how they interact with you, good or bad, but having that mindset of how you're interacting with them can affect others and how that goes, what you're carrying. Have this internal standard, you could say, but I don't know, I just feel like I've been able to kind of do that recently, instead of just kind of do things how I want or in my own way, but trying to see a relationship differently and my mindsets towards who others are in my life and in my circle. But I think it's important when we're around anybody, or really any time, how we're thinking about others and how we're interacting, because that changes how the outcome of things and what we're applying in life and just our general perspective of life. But you know, I really feel like if you allow the Lord to work on your mindset in that way, can that really start to change in your life? And so, you know, I've just been really excited in that, and you know, not wanting to put myself up or anything, but just like thinking differently and thinking of relationships differently and wanting to continue in that, because obviously I'm not perfect, but you know, I really think that changes relationship when you're really thinking about those things rather than just kind of doing things on your own and what you want. I don't know if I'm making sense, but because it's kind of hard to explain. It's just a different perspective of relationship.
I have a silly example in mind with you. I think the way that I have kind of started seeing and trying to know people in general is kind of looking at their life not as a singular point as to who they are in this very moment, but looking at people's lives as their journey and seeing, at least as much as you can, it depends on how long you've known the person, how much information you're aware of, but seeing how far they've come, I think is so important to understanding one another. A conversation I actually think I had with my dad a while ago, but I think it kind of fits to this meeting in the middle, is there was a time in my life in which I religiously took cold showers every single night because I wanted to punish myself, and I really hated doing it, and I did it to myself because I thought it was the right thing to do. And I realized early on into this journey, oh, I have a lot of those tendencies, and I think a lot of those things creates a pretty bad mentalities in me. And so I'm gonna stop taking cold showers, and I'm gonna try and do warm showers. I'm going to try and do something I'll actually enjoy. Simultaneously, I had a conversation with my dad, and he was saying how he actually started taking cold showers because he needs discipline in his life. And cold showers or cold plunges really give him that grounding he needs at the start of a day to engage properly. And I noticed that's really funny. My dad and I are both starting on different spectrums of the same thing, and we're both coming together in this middle. And we're both technically, if you would look at it on an outside perspective, heading in opposite directions, but what we're actually doing is meeting in the middle. We're both aiming for that same bullseye. One of us is undershot and the other is overshot, right? But we're still aiming for the same thing, even though that looks like doing two different things in our life. It reminds me of that example you talk about with all the rulers and the different points of history. And now applying the standard, it looks different every time it is done. And I think that that is very applicable for each of our lives. I think in chasing the standard and in chasing that bullseye in all of our lives, we can do the exact opposite thing of someone else and it still be in the same right line. Now, that doesn't exactly give anybody free rein to just do whatever they want, obviously. But my point in that mostly is it's really, really difficult for any of us to judge another person simply because we think we know the right answer, because the right answer is right for us, right? I cannot judge my dad, right? Because he decided he wanted to take cold showers because, oh, I was down that path. I know cold showers lead to bad things for me, so that's going to be bad for him. No, I think cold showers are great for him because that's exactly how it was for his journey. Simultaneously, he's not going to judge me like, oh, Jaden, stop taking cold showers. That's not good. I know that's good for me, so it must be good for him. Well, it's not, right? I'm unfortunately, a bit of a masochistic person. So when I start tacking things on that to myself, it creates bad headspaces for me, right? And so I think that really in understanding people and in understanding the balance, a lot of it comes down to not looking at people with their individual actions and looking at them as pinpoints on timelines, but really trying to see someone in their entirety, trying to see someone from where they've started and to now where they are. And when you can see somebody as a journey, not just a pinpoint in time, I think you not only start to understand the person better, but I think you start to understand God's work in your own life better. Because even though you can be doing the opposite thing to someone else, I think the more you get to see what applying the standard looks like into a multitude of lives, you start to recognize what it looks like in your own life even more. It's all fun.
Makes me think of like an interesting thought to, it's a bit of a thought experiment to, you can apply, starting with easier things, so things that you do a lot, and maybe especially things that you consider yourself proficient in or skillful in, as a way to understand the meaning of it. Here's my hypothesis or assertion, or whatever you said. Everything, becoming proficient in anything, really understanding anything, involves knowing how or when to stop and when to start. So it's about finding something's timing, basically. So that's really a very general statement, but just think about that for anything. Like, some things may be difficult at first to see how that applies at all, but I think if you were to think it through a little bit longer or hard enough, you would actually see it doesn't apply. Everything involves knowing how to and when to stop and when to start. It's that enables you to find not just find but find the pattern of a thing. Everything exists in virtue of or because of a pattern or through a pattern. I'm trying to keep this from sounding too weird and lofty, but when you're able to see this through, say, some skill or activity that you're used to engaging in, then see how this applies to, or try to understand this in the context of life itself. This reminds me of the conversation we had many months ago about knowing when to show strength and when to yield. It's that same thing, basically. It actually really kind of just boils down to that, honestly. Knowing when it is time to stop and when it is time to move. Life is pretty much like a orchestral performance in that way. You have to know, and we've used that example many, many times in other spiritual discussions, but it is discovering the timing of life. It is discovering the rhythm of life, the rhythm of some activity, of some skill. So I would be interested to hear if any of you have, don't worry if it sounds goofy or not well thought out. This is just exploring this idea, because I'm not even positing it as like some principle to live by or anything like that. It's just a thought I had regarding how the need works. Because I'm just gonna say one thing. It's not like trying to find this place of inner, stillness. Like, you never do anything. You always just, go with the flow is the side of this that I'm attempting to describe. So there's no effort on your part. There's absolutely no striving or attempt to do anything better than you already are. Or, on the other side, you never stop. Your ambition has no end, and it never rests. And you can always be doing better. You never see yourself as sufficient or good enough, because you can always do something greater than you have done or than you are doing. So there's no end point there. There's no stillness. But it's because the first doesn't know when to start, when to move, and the second doesn't know when to or the first doesn't know when to stop, when to move, and when to show strength. And the second doesn't know when to stop, when to yield, when to rest. So go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I gotta reconjure. No, don't get aware.
Sorry.
No, I'm not aware of it. What you said was important. But I think going on about less about the mean, or what you said just a little earlier about habits and improvement and stuff, and knowing the right timing for everything. I think the most practical way I've known that is it's very hard to decide, at least for me, when I can think I've conquered something or I've moved past it. And the best way to be able to stop that, to say I'm in a happy place here and I should be able to move ahead, is by I need to start something else. This time, or like this frame of thought needs to be set aside. But if I do that and nothing changes, it's not being set aside, it's being put down right in front of me, it's still in the way. I need to assign something else to this space. If I'm done feeling like this all the time. This space needs to be filled with a new thing. Which was also a very good way of finding out I was not done with that thing yet. Because trying to move past it, I found it was still something I struggled with. Well, I just found a moment of stability for like a prolonged period of time where I was like, oh, I'm good now. I guess I can work on something else. And I found out very quickly, no, I still need to work on this. I need to harbor this, at least for now, and set time for it. But that is a good way of finding out, is, with start and stop. If you think you're good on something, convince yourself of it. Say, yeah, I can put this aside, and you'll find out very quickly, probably, whether or not, it's a lie. Not like, you're not probably not being cruel to yourself. You're trying to this is about self-improvement. You're not lying to yourself and saying it's aside. But life and all of that will show you whether or not you are capable of putting that aside yet. But that's better than just sitting there wondering, am I good yet? Do I have this down?
I would say more often than not, the Lord, if you have a listening ear to Him, kind of makes clear your starting and your stopping points with such things. I was thinking of, it's funny, you don't know Wes, because I don't think you got to be a part of his mini class he did here, but he's a financial advisor that I got to meet with him. He has a YouTube channel and I subscribe to it, and he does these little short things that I appreciate seeing, because he actually has some cool stuff on there. But I saw one last night right before bed, and it was pretty interesting. I liked it. I can't remember the verse, but it talked about walking forward and having an ear behind, or putting your ears behind you. In a way, always moving forward, but never ceasing listening. And the key there is actually moving and then actively listening. I think when we always talk about, what does it mean to not speak unless you've heard the Father speak, or not move unless the Father's telling you to move? What does that actually look like in practical day-to-day? You just never move, right? Because I don't think that's actually how things are meant to be. And I appreciate what you are saying, because I think making the effort, not, as you were saying, not doing the undershooting of just always sitting there, always going with the flow, because I don't think that's what's expected of us. It's not practical. But I think what happens with ambition and action and showing strength is all too often we get caught up in, well, I'm going to be empowered to do this in the way that I know how, because this is what God wants me to do. And you move forward and you forget to listen. I think when it comes to the timing, when it comes to the balance, when it comes to the starting and the stopping, I think all of that He gives you if you take the time to actually listen to Him. The way I have been trying to live, and I don't know if it's necessarily like the best, but it's something that I just think it's funny that you mentioned that, and then I saw that West video. It really correlates for me of just always walking forward, but never never stop listening to the voice behind you, because I think that's what guides. Do you know the book we were reading as young men, and it talks about comparing the life of a son to that of a horse, and just how in breaking the horse and things like that, it's very comparable. But I think of honestly a horse walking forward and listening to the call of a master behind, right? I mean, you don't want a horse that's just going to sit there and not move until you tell it to move, and then it stops moving once you stop talking to it. What you want is a horse that'll walk forward, and it'll stop when you tell it to stop, and they'll turn when you tell it to turn, but that's always moving forward. I think this actually applies to what you were talking about earlier with your interpretation of
That's
balance.
very well.
But I think that really what that actually looks like is always trying, always moving forward, but always listening. There's a way of action that I think can beget peace and beget stillness, while still necessarily requiring action. I think much of our lives, all of us, are very busy and full, naturally, just because of the jobs we all have. But I think that there is a balance that can be stricken there, that we don't have to determine. We don't have to say, okay, this is enough. Okay, this I need to do more. Okay, this I have finished the work on, so I don't need to worry about it. I can devote time to this now. I think really what it is you just move forward and you always listen. And that listening, it doesn't, necessarily mean you're gonna hear a voice in your
No, yeah, I think that's the hard part, is listening. What you listen to could be different every single time.
Well, it will be, but also
What you're saying kind of sounds, if I'm hearing you right, it kind of sounds like you're saying like walking in faith in a way.
I can certainly.
Sometimes you're having to do things in faith, and so.
You have faith that you will hear. You have faith that he's going to tell you what to do. The horse just keeps walking forward. He knows the master's call. He knows the master's bridle, that he will lead you in the right direction because you're pulling his chariot, right?
Maybe we don't fully understand what we're walking into.
No.
Like that's part of walking.
That is absolutely walking in faith. I think I see your correlation now. Yes, that's absolutely what it is. I very rarely ever really know what I'm trying to work on within myself, or when the right timing for things are, or like, oh, I need to devote some time to this now. I always make an effort to just do the next thing I know to do. And when it's good enough, I'll only know if I'm paying attention. And that comes to having time of stillness. That comes to being intentional in my conversations with others, because so often he can speak to you there. I mean, that even comes in, like I was saying, that little YouTube short I happened to see that just randomly popped up. I think that listening actually means being intentful in everything that you do.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I might have to sit myself down and redefine what I've determined to be a sin, which is opportunistic behavior. I need to re-look at that, because I have it's the same way. It's like, if you don't like it in other people, it probably means you don't like it in yourself. When someone's really jumping up for occasions, I've kind of decided, I did decide that was not something I could do. But I think I do need to be able to listen, because jumping up for an occasion, it could be a good occasion. This could be something important that it's like, oh yeah, I didn't have time to plan for this. I'm already willing to drop everything and go most of the time. But I think that was the problem. I was so willing to do that. I determined it to be being opportunistic, or jumping at chances. But I do need to do that in a way that is listening for things. If something's out of the norm, I can't decide, oh, this wasn't for me. I have to say, this could very well be, and I need to look at it fundamentally. I need to actually process it.
I think stopping and resting, showing weakness, those things, doesn't necessarily look like inaction. It looks like intention.
Yeah.
I
Intent is very important.
I'm trying not to belabor the point, but I feel like there's a a description I'm missing here, but all of it to say, I think that the balance, the mean standard, is not something that we, in understanding it, can know exactly how to apply it to our own lives. The standard is not something that we see and then we apply. The standard is applied to us. It is our job to make sure we are paying attention and listening for it. I think that's my main point. The Lord shows you the balance. He shows you how to live. If we're not so busy trying to figure out ourselves how we think we need to live, you might actually be able to hear it.
True. Very true.
I would extend that and say that the standard is applied to us, and because it is, then we do actually apply it. So agreeing with it not simply being a matter of, seeing it and then assuming one understands it and then maybe haphazardly applying it afterwards, but it is still something we apply to ourselves just as it is applied to us, and then in an external way even to and I would say in a non forceful, or not a forceful way, but maybe in like a virtuously coercive way to the people around us, because that is in essence what it is to carry a standard. It's you don't go around trying to convince others or to forcefully apply it to others, but just because it is applied to you, and it is what has shaped you, it is because of that it is then applied to others inevitably, because you carry it with you that way.
That's what I kind of mean. I think that's where the effortless action comes into it.
Yeah.
You don't need to be the one applying it to others. And simultaneously, with applying it to yourself, that's what having that listening ear is. That is how you apply it to yourself. What I kind of mean by applying it to yourself is thinking you have an idea conceptually of what it is, and you have a rule book that you can apply to every situation and every circumstance. And that is impossible.
Right.
What, are we concluded on this one? Did you want to read two of them?
I do want to read the next one, but I feel like we can still
Yeah. If you
talk
talk
more about what we're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. It's a little off topic, but
That's fine.
one thing that occurred to me is like, I very much live by like, you will not be punished for your actions, but by your actions. But I think being able to sit down and rest, I have to do what I always do, which is, well, if this is true, the opposite's true. I will not be rewarded for my actions, but by my actions. And it sounds very individualistic to say it that way, but I think with that mindset at least encroached upon everybody, then yeah, you will become a virtuous example. You will be fighting for the mean and the method. It'll be, a light will shine through you that way.
To even say that is to, it's to admit that there are laws basically that govern human behavior, that govern reality. So your actions as a result of those laws either, as you put it, punish or reward you.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yeah,
a
it is
randomized
not. Yeah,
thing.
it is not an effect that you will encourage, but it is an effect that you will omit. Almost, I don't know how to say it anymore, but I do like your wording of it. It is fundamental. It is a law of, I won't say nature, but more than nature, or maybe only nature, and that's why.
That's why I appreciate the thinking of these things in terms of finding, again, even if it sounds a little cliche, being able to find the rhythm of the thing that you're doing, that you're learning, that you're living in. Because again, that's all a matter of, at least in the beginning, it's a matter of learning a sense of timing.
Yeah.
And that does begin with conscious effort. This kind of does tie into the discussion on Wu Wei and how you actually make the effort to become effortless in your behavior or in your skill, whatever. And part of the, I guess you could say, if there is any argument at all, that one of the arguments in this is that it does begin with effort. It does begin with conscious action. And I would say
if you want to change, like it always takes more effort to change than to stay the same.
It begins like it's like learning an instrument, for instance. You don't have really, unless you're born with like this intuitive sense, you don't have that timing down. But through enough repetition, it becomes a thing that is almost literally and fully effortless for you. Because it's become a part of your nature. But even in the learning period of practicing that instrument, it is still a matter of knowing when, even at the minuscule level of what notes you play and then when you stop, it's again all a matter of knowing when to play and when to stop playing. So that is what I'm thinking is the way that the rhythm of the way of an instrument, for instance, is discovered. It also is what allows you to grow in your proficiency in your skill, your understanding of it. Now, I would say the same applies to virtue. The master saying that rare are those who are able to understand virtue is, I think, by extension saying there are very few who even try to apply the mean to life. Because by knowing the mean and then being able to apply the mean is how you come to understand virtue. It's how you come to see virtue real in your life. Shining in your life. That's the verb that's always used with virtues. It's something that shines. It's something that's glowing. So that other people can see it. It's a very relational thing in that sense. Because it changes people. It even draws them. In fact, I think I've said this before, but that word virtue is duh. It sounds very funny in English. But the way that's also been translated is charisma. And that in Korean, charisma is something that actually draws people to a person. But we're seeing that this is more than just a personality trait. This is it is a moral, spiritual principle that is in essence a very powerful force in the midst of people. So obviously it draws them, it changes them. And this was another thought I had in terms of this timing principle is hopefully this doesn't get too obtuse, but you even think of words that have changed the hearts of in the minds of people. it's not just the words that have done so. And actually it never has been just the word that has done so. It is always accompanied by when and how that word was spoken or written or said. You know what I'm saying? So I can say I said something to one person at one time in one place, and it changed the way they thought about a thing. But if I said those same exact words to a different person in a different time and place, it maybe doesn't have any impact over them at all. The same vibrations and sounds came out of my mouth that transformed another life. But it had no effect on this other person. So there's many words we could use to describe this element I'm talking about, the timing or the context, whatever it is. But that is a very important piece to this formula, if you will, or this very important variable to this formula of transforming another person. And that applies to more than just words.
Yeah.
No.
Any sort of communication. Yeah.
Communication, or even a lot of like the
But what is the capacity that we learn to develop in order to know when and how to speak in such a way or to act in such a way that changes someone or changes us even. It is again the sense of timing.
yeah.
It is knowing how to apply the mean. What I think I've not even intentionally established today in our understanding of the mean is that it has so much to do with timing, timeliness. And so if you don't have or you aren't developing that sense of timeliness in the rhythm of your life, so to speak, then you can't understand the mean. You can't apply the mean. Because that is essentially what it is. But I would be very interested to know if you guys have a different understanding and hopefully a better understanding or enhancement of what I've said, whatever it is. Because this is becoming increasingly interesting to me. Just considering it. Just kind of bringing some things together that we've talked about before.
I don't know, that's lots of, but I think when it comes to changing another person and what you were talking about, giving the words power, I think something that is probably more integral than anything else is relationship. I think in absence of relationship with a person, your words and life lack power. I think even if you live in the right way and say the right things and have the right timing and all of that, if you do not have relationship with others, I don't think you have power.
That's an interesting thing to bring up for sure, because the way I'd see it is relationship with a person, which there are varying degrees of relationship with a person. But the deeper the relationship with the person, the more opportunities there are for what you say to impact them. So the timing is, in a sense, more, I don't know, I don't want to say more flexible, but it is a lot easier to say something at the right time and the right place to positively impact them or negatively impact them. That depends on us. But that doesn't negate the possibility of someone I've never seen before in my life walking past me and saying something at the right time and place in such a way that still impacts me greatly. Those things are still possible. Just as it is still possible to say something that maybe you intended to be very impactful to someone that you've known all your life, and through, or because of something like familiarity, it has zero effect on them. You see how the timing still plays a role in everything. But it is absolutely the case, and a very important thing to point out, that relationship not only makes certain things more possible to impact and influence another person, but there are some things that simply cannot happen or exist at all, even with something like the timing in which a thing is said or done, unless that relationship exists. There are many, many such things that would apply to that.
Isaac pulled out a cool Analects 1122 that kind of relates relationship even back to what we were saying earlier with the mean looking different in different people. 1122 just talks about how two students came to Confucius with a question, and he gave them two different answers. It was Zulu and Run.
I feel like we actually looked at that one not too long ago.
And it was a while ago, but yeah, we did look at it together, I recall. I was in class for 11. But yeah, and it's just how Confucius gave them different advice on the same problem because he knows and has a relationship with both of them and knows that they both needed a different response for that same problem they were having.
Yeah, I'm recalling because I watched a video like a week and a half ago that included this.
Oh, I see.
That's why I thought it was not that long ago. But it was actually a video of a guy talking about the rectification of names, which that's a different discussion. But, yeah, Confucius, and this is one of the best examples of this, but he obviously had a very keen sense of timeliness because one disciple was able to observe him answering two other disciples completely differently, even though they asked the same question. So you can either see that as him having, or him being manipulative and dishonest, or extremely wise and understanding of not just what to say, but to whom and how and when to say it, which has to do with, that is right there a perfect example of Confucius applying the mean. Not just because he did this, we're not anymore looking at the first impression we have of understanding something like the mean, which is finding this balanced behavior that everyone can agree with. We're actually looking at something that seems to disagree with itself, an example that seems to be contradictory. But this is actually a beautiful example of someone applying the mean, because he has that proper understanding of timeliness. This is, I think, just a really neat way to, and maybe even an important way to develop in ourselves, to see things that we're trying to improve in life, within or in the light of timeliness, of proper timing. And at first, I can just speak from my own experience here, it will be kind of a clumsy way to try to interpret circumstances in life. Because you might just scratch your head a little bit and say, well, how do I do what I should do at the right time? It will sound a little awkward at first, but life is basically music. I don't really know how else to say it, and I don't want to sound mystical or anything, but you learn to hear the music and live according to them. And music always follows some kind of...
Yeah, there's a lot of analogies there.
No, for sure.
So, because I was, in the same way, I always use stream, where it's the same metaphors, where it's like, going with the flow is going to be easier, but there is times that you have to act.
Mm-hmm. And times that you have to just drop it.
Yeah, there's times you were going the right way.
That to your dad a little bit ago.
You want me to read it?
Oh, no,
Okay.
Sorry, I realized that you were just talking. You can read it out loud or just by yourself. I don't care either way.
So I had a talk with Noah before conjured an analogy in my head very similar to the illustration. You can play your part without hearing the music just by looking at the conductor. But to hear the music is to understand the conductor. To hear the music is to love what the conductor loves. To hear the music and what you are a part of in the orchestra gives purpose and joy to your part. To be a part of something so much more beautiful and meaningful than anything you could do alone. Hearing the music is understanding why you do what you do. Yeah, that's very true. It's really hard not to use some kind of music analogy to describe many things, because it's like so applicable. We've been using the symphony and the orchestra imagery for a lot of recent spiritual discussion, especially as it has to do with unity in the body of Christ. So it is very, very interesting.
Yeah, I like that analogy a lot of hearing music versus just seeing it and knowing your part. Because that reminds me of, I don't even know what class we were talking about, but like knowing the right thing to do versus having the passion to do the right thing to do, or becoming passionless in the same struggles. That reminds me of that.
That's what it's actually about, because this was on the spirit of understanding, and I realized that understanding the Lord and His ways is hearing the music.
Mm-hmm.
You can be part of an orchestra, and just imagine you're deaf, I suppose, and you can play your part diligently because you can read the sheet music, and you can look at the conductor for the cues, but at the end of the day, you're going to feel so passionless about what you're doing, because you're just, plucking random strings or blowing random notes into a brass instrument, and it's going to lack any sort of zest that you have for it. But when you're actually able to hear the music, you'll actually understand why everybody can be so passionate about playing it, and why everybody's so excited to play in this orchestra, and why the conductor does what he does. And I think that hearing the music is akin to understanding in the sense of not an intellectual way. It's kind of, I wouldn't be able to summarize the spirit of understanding easily, but I think it very much went in line with the discussion or the meetings we've had regarding that.
It once again reminds me of another thought I had and shared with you guys about what the Tao is, the way, as being like that music that's always playing in the background, so to speak.
That's what I was talking about, the discussion we were having.
Oh, I see. Yeah. It's either so loud that everyone can't hear it, or so quiet that everyone can, but don't they don't know that they can. It's just, but we only can recognize that we do hear it when we begin to live by it, or act and speak and walk according to its rhythm.
Walk forward and then you're behind you.
Yeah, it definitely involves listening. Absolutely. Okay, I think we've reached the end point here.